Imagine wearing a neon red, like high visibility vest
Right.
while trying to sneak through the middle of an active war zone.
Oh, man. On paper, it sounds like a terrible idea, right? Like an absolute death wish.
Yeah, totally. A neon sign saying, hey, look at me.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But for one of the most ruthless killers currently, stalking the leaves in your backyard, drawing that kind of massive visual attention, is actually the ultimate survival strategy.
It really is, yeah.
So, welcome to this deep dive. Our mission today is to explore how a single tiny observation in a backyard garden.
Just one little thing.
Yes, just one brightly colored insect on a leaf, how they can reveal some truly profound truths about ecological harmony, the invisible wars happening all around us, and perhaps even more importantly, the limitations of human perception.
The smallest details often hold the biggest lessons, provided we have the patience and, the tools to actually observe them in their natural context. Yeah, and our source material today is just a absolute masterclass in patience. We are pulling from a personal blog post published today, August 23, 2026, by a writer named Ang.
Hmm.
And the post is titled Notes on Gardening Part 995, Spotting the Assassin Bug Reduviidae.
Wow, part 995.
I know, right? Now, the text itself is relatively brief. It's just a handful of paragraphs. But the implications packed into this one observation are massive. So, okay, let's unpack this.
We really should start by looking at the sheer weight of that title.
Yeah.
I mean, part 995.
Yeah, it's a lot.
We have to contextualize Ang's gardening journey before we even look at the insect because, documenting nearly 1,000 specific notes on a single subject.
It's just a backyard garden.
All right, exactly, backyard garden. It speaks to a highly methodical, highly dedicated observer.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't your casual weekend hobbyist throwing some seeds in the dirt and just hoping for the best.
Right, hoping for a tomato by August.
Yeah, this is someone analyzing an ecosystem over a massive timeline.
And the text points out that for the vast majority of those previous, 994 posts, Ang has maintained a strict focus on the plants themselves.
The flora.
Right, the stationary elements of the garden,
Uh-huh.
soil composition, the root growth, the health of the stems and the leaves, all that.
Yeah.
But this specific entry marks a very deliberate pivot
Yeah.
because Ang is shifting focus from the stationary greenery to examine the fascinating insects, the fauna that's inhabiting these carefully cultivated areas.
And that pivot, it represents a very natural evolution for a long-term observer.
Really, how so?
Well, when you spend enough time hyper-focused on the macro level of any system, so the plant, beds, the overall structure, the seasonal yields, you eventually hit a point where you start noticing the dynamic micro world that makes the whole structure function in the first place.
Yeah, it makes me think of like watching an epic sweeping movie.
Oh, okay.
So for the first few viewings, you're totally focused on the gorgeous landscape cinematography and the dialogue of the main actors.
Right, the main plot.
But then maybe on your fifth viewing, you suddenly notice there is this incredibly complex, highly dramatic subplot happening entirely in the background.
Oh, yeah, like right behind them.
Right, being played out completely silently by the extras. And you realize background extras are actually running the show.
That is a perfect analogy. The plants are the stage,
Yeah.
but the insects are the actors.
Yeah.
And when an observer makes that cognitive shift from macro to micro, their entire understanding of the ecosystem fundamentally changes.
It has to, right?
It does, because you stop seeing a plant as just a botanical specimen that needs water, and you start seeing it as a bustling habitat.
Wow.
It transforms into a tiny city, complete with its own infrastructure, its own sanitation workers, and its own predatory threats.
But noticing the intricate politics of that tiny city is tough unless a specific character stands out vividly against all that green foliage, right?
You need a focal point.
Yeah, you need a protagonist to draw your eye, or in this case, a really intimidating antagonist.
Yeah.
Because the star of Ang's post is the assassin bug, and the title mentions the scientific name Reduviidae.
Right, Reduviidae. That's the scientific family name for a diverse group of insects that are universally equipped with a lethal curved beak.
A curved beak.
Yeah, a beak. They use this specialized mouth part to pierce their prey and inject a highly effective venom and digestive enzymes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which allows them to consume other insects literally from the inside out.
That is brutal. Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting. Ang describes spotting this bug, and the appearance is incredibly striking. It is bright red with a black body.
Very vivid.
Yeah, a very vivid, almost aggressive coloration. And Ang deduces that this specific bug, which the text notes is likely a nymph or an adult, is using this bright uniform for a very specific reason.
The assumption about it being a nymph is actually really important here.
Oh, why is that?
So a nymph is simply the juvenile stage of the insect. It hasn't fully developed its adult wings yet, but it already possesses that vivid, high-contrast coloration.
Even at that young stage.
Even then, yeah. And in biology, we call this aposematism.
Aposematism. Oh.
Yeah, it's nature's way of wearing a high-visibility hazard sign.
Like the neon vest.
Exactly like the neon dust.
Yeah.
By standing out so sharply against the green leaves, the insect is broadcasting a clear warning to birds, frogs, or larger predatory insects. It's signaling, do not eat me. I am either highly toxic or I will put up a terrible fight.
But the paradox here is what I find so fascinating, and it is an irony that Aang explicitly notes in the text. This creature is literally named an assassin bug.
Right.
Aang points out that they are generalist predators. They actively hunt and feed on other insects, with the source specifically mentioning ants, termites, and aphids. So why does a ruthless killer need to dress up in neon warning colors to deter its own predators? I mean, it is both this cold-blooded hunter stalking the garden and simultaneously the paranoid hunted wearing a physical defense mechanism.
Yeah.
It's like putting on tactical gear for a stealth strike, but the gear is painted bright red.
What's fascinating here is how clearly this shatters our traditional simplified view of the food web.
How so?
Well, we often default to a very linear hierarchical model of nature.
Right, like a ladder.
Yeah, exactly like a ladder.
Oh.
We assume there are prey animals down at the bottom and apex predators sitting safely at the top. We think that if you possess a venomous beak and actively hunt, you've won the biological game.
Right.
And you are safe from being eaten.
We assume the predator is exempt from the anxiety of being prey.
Exactly. But the reality of the microworld is much more complicated than that. The assassin bug is an absolute terror to a termite or an aphid. It is the apex predator of that specific leaf.
Just that leaf, though.
Just that leaf. Because to a passing blue jay or a larger predatory beetle, the assassin bug is just a slow-moving, protein-rich snack.
Wow.
Yeah, being a predator does not grant you immunity. The bright red and black uniform is a constant biological reminder of its own vulnerability within the broader ecosystem.
That makes so much sense.
It has to successfully hunt for its own food while simultaneously dodging threats from above.
That dual identity. The fact that this bug is keeping smaller pests in check while actively avoiding being eaten by larger animals, that is the exact mechanism that triggers Aang's greatest realization in this post. Aang writes that finding this specific bug proves the ecosystem in the gardening area is reaching a balance.
Right, a balance.
Yeah, and the text defines this balance very precisely. It's not just some vague feeling of garden harmony,
Right.
Aang defines it as having a healthy population of prey and predators where each keeps the other's population in check.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, reaching this state is a massive tangible milestone for anyone cultivating a biological system.
Huge deal for a gardener.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because when you first break ground on a garden, you are usually fighting the environment.
Yeah, pulling weeds and stuff.
Exactly. You are in a state of artificial control. You're pulling the weeds by hand.
Yeah.
You're aggressively spraying for aphids. You're introducing artificial fertilizers. You are the sole exhausted manager of that environment, trying to force it to survive.
So the gardener is the one doing all the heavy lifting to keep the plants alive.
Right. But Aang is observing the critical transition from artificially controlling the environment to facilitating a self-regulating system.
Okay.
And this is where we need to look at the actual mechanism of how populations keep each other in check.
How does that actually work?
It operates through continuous population oscillation.
Oscillation.
Yes, basically a biological seesaw. So imagine a sudden boom in the aphid population in Aang's garden. They are feasting on the plant sap. They're multiplying rapidly.
Now, in a standard artificially managed garden, that aphid boom is the moment the gardener panics and starts spraying chemicals to save the plant.
Right, exactly. They intervene. But in a balanced ecosystem, that aphid boom acts as an all-you-can-eat buffet for the assassin bugs. Because the food source is suddenly so abundant, the predator population spikes in response.
Yeah.
The assassin bugs hunt aggressively, decimating the aphid numbers and protecting the plants in the process.
Okay.
But eventually they hunt so effectively that they consume their entire food supply.
The buffet runs out of food.
Exactly. And then the assassin bug population crashes due to starvation or, they're forced to move on, which creates a temporary opening for the few surviving aphids to start multiplying again.
And it just starts all over?
Yes, the cycle repeats continuously. Nature takes over the heavy lifting. The system regulates itself through this intricate dance of supply and demand.
Okay, I have to push back on the terminology here, specifically the word balance.
Oh, yeah.
Because when we hear the word balance in everyday life, we tend to associate it with absolute peace.
Sure.
We think of a tranquil yoga studio, Zen. But based on the biological seesaw you just described, a garden is never truly finished or peaceful.
Not at all, no.
Balance actually describes a highly active, totally brutal, microscopic war zone. I mean, it is a continuous cycle of hunting, starvation, and reproduction. Aang has simply reached the point of passively supervising this incredible carnage.
That's a great way to put it. Balance, in a biological sense, is never static peace. It is dynamic tension.
Dynamic tension.
Yeah, it relies on a million tiny births and deaths happening every single day that mathematically offset each other so that the overarching structure, the garden itself, survives and thrives.
Wow.
The war is constantly raging on the surface of every leaf, but neither the aphids nor the assassin bugs ever win completely.
And because neither side secures a total victory, the plants flourish.
Exactly.
So you have this brutal, perfectly functioning biological machine doing exactly what it evolved to do over millions of years.
Yeah.
And naturally, as a dedicated observer, Aang wants to capture that moment, right? To
Yeah.
freeze it and document it.
Of course.
But that is where million-year-old biology brutally clashes with modern consumer technology.
This brings a completely different layer of frustration to the narrative.
Yeah, it really does. The text details a hard pivot from the wonders of biology to the limitations of technology. Because Aang spots this incredible marker of ecological success, this bright red and black assassin bug, and pulls out a mobile phone to document the proof.
Right, trying to get a picture.
But Aang expresses deep frustration with the result. The post notes that the macro capability of the mobile phone camera only managed to capture the level of detail at a certain distance.
The physical limitations of smartphone hardware become glaringly obvious the moment you try to use them outside of their intended design parameters.
It makes me think of trying to read a beautifully printed novel, but you are forced to look at the pages through a telescope.
Oh, man. Yeah.
I mean, the telescope is an amazing piece of technology, but it is fundamentally engineered to look at massive objects that are very far away.
Right, it's for stars, not books.
Yeah, and when you try to use it to read small text that is right in front of your face,
Right.
the lens simply cannot process the information. It is the wrong tool for the scale of the job.
The lenses on our mobile phones are engineering marvels, truly. But they are broadly optimized for human-scale observation.
Yeah.
They are designed for wide-angle landscapes, group photos or portraits taken from, a few feet away.
Taking a picture of your friends at dinner.
Exactly. They utilize small sensors and wide apertures to take in as much light and context as possible.
Okay.
But when Aang tries to force that standard lens an inch away from a tiny insect, the physics of light will not allow the sensor to resolve the image.
I just can't do it.
Nope, the camera's hunting for a focal plane that simply does not exist at that microscopic distance.
Yeah.
You move the phone a millimeter forward, and it blurs 4. You move it a millimeter back, and the bug is indistinguishable from the leaf.
It's just a red smudge.
Just a smudge, yeah.
And this technological failure leaves Aang at a real crossroads at the end of the post.
It does.
Aang is actively weighing options to solve this documentation problem. The text mentions evaluating whether to try and improve the mobile camera's macro capabilities, perhaps by attaching one of those specialized clip-on lenses that altered the physical focal length, or if it is time to invest in a completely dedicated photography system specifically designed to capture the intricate details of the insect population.
This raises an important question about the psychology of the modern observer.
Yeah.
And think about it. Aang has already achieved the intellectual goal. Aang saw the bug correctly identified, the aposematic coloring, deduced its role as a generalist predator, and understood that its presence signaled the milestone of dynamic tension within the ecosystem.
Right. The knowledge has been successfully attained and processed.
Exactly.
Aang possesses the complete truth of the garden's health.
But in our current era, simply knowing a truth internally is rarely satisfying.
It's true. We always want more.
We do. Our desire to fully comprehend nature is heavily bottlenecked by our compulsion to produce physical evidence.
Pictures or it didn't happen.
Right, exactly. We have this deep drive to not just witness a biological milestone, but to capture it, digitize it, and prove it visually. The desire to upgrade to a dedicated photography system will not make the soil any richer or the plants any healthier.
Not at all.
The upgrade is entirely about satisfying the human need to bridge the gap between what our minds can comprehend and what our tools can physically document.
We want to shrink ourselves down into that micro world and bring a piece of it back with us in perfect, crisp focus.
Yeah, we do.
Telling a friend my garden has reached dynamic tension is an abstract concept, but showing them a high-resolution macro photograph of an assassin bug injecting venom into a termite on a leaf that provides undeniable visceral proof.
It highlights a strange dependency, though. Aang's immense joy in the biological discovery was immediately tempered by technological frustration.
Right.
The natural world is performing its complex role perfectly, but the digital tool failed to validate the analog experience.
So what does this all mean? We started out looking at a single bright red bug sitting on a green leaf, and we've ended up dissecting the mechanics of predator-prey oscillation, the physical limitations of mobile camera lenses, and the human compulsion to document our reality. It's a lot from one bug.
It is. If we pull all of this together for the listener, someone who might not care about gardening, but is out there building their own complex systems, whether that's managing a team at work, running a community project, or even just trying to build a new personal habit. What is the core functional takeaway from Aang's 995th post?
The most universal application here is about where we choose to focus our attention when evaluating the success of our systems.
Okay.
Building any functional, sustainable system requires looking past the obvious stationary plants, the macro elements.
Like the project outlines or overarching corporate structures?
Exactly, the big revenue metrics. Those are essential, but they are just the stage. To truly understand if your system is healthy, you have to look for the hidden insects. You must observe the tiny dynamic interactions happening in the background between individual team members or daily processes.
The unseen elements running the subplot.
Yes. True success in a workplace or a project is not achieving a state of static, conflict-free peace.
Right. No yoga studio. No yoga studio. It is reaching a state of dynamic tension where the different personalities, internal checks, and operational processes naturally balance each other out without requiring your constant, exhausting intervention. When your team has its own internal regulators, when the metaphorical assassin bugs are keeping the metaphorical aphids under control, you transition from being a stressed micromanager to an observer of a self-sustaining system.
That makes so much sense, but stepping back to be an observer comes with the exact same challenge Aang faced at the end of the post.
It does.
Which leaves us with a really provocative thought to end on.
It forces us to examine the tools we use to perceive our own reality. Because Aang recognized that the ecosystem was a massive balanced success, but experienced deep frustration due to the inability to clearly capture and see that success through the standard lens of a mobile phone.
Yeah.
The truth of the garden's health was completely real, but the lens lacked the resolution to focus on it.
The hardware simply couldn't see the victory.
Precisely. So if the true health of a complex system is maintained by microscopic interactions that our standard tools cannot easily process, we have to ask ourselves, how many perfectly balanced, highly functional systems in our own lives, in our workplaces, or in our relationships are we entirely oblivious to?
Wow.
How much quiet, dynamic success are we missing every single day simply because we haven't bothered to upgrade our lens to recognize it?
That's a great question.
Are we staring at the peaceful green painting of our lives, completely unaware of the beautiful, intricate battleground making it all possible?